Do you think men and women are equal?
Ooh. No.
Is Newcastle a big place? Where would you sort of say are the gems?
Oh, now you're asking the questions. You can definitely pick up some good bargains. There was a perfect HMO that sold for 106,000.
Like, how much can you rent a room for?
So up there, they were talking.
Who is Stephanie Baker?
She's a serviced accommodation queen. She has a portfolio of properties herself. She's going to tell us a little bit about real life.
I had a mental breakdown. I went round to a friend's for dinner and just broke down. And no one prepares you for that. Somebody said to me, maybe business just isn't for you. Having your own business isn't for you.
Welcome back to Take a Seat. Boy, have I got a guest for you today. We've got a female entrepreneur. She's done everything from going to super yachts to even breeding horses. But today, she's going to be conversating all things about property. She's a serviced accommodation queen. She has a portfolio of properties herself, but she actually likes to work for an estate agent. She's going to tell us a little bit about real life and how the journey of entrepreneurship can be very lonely. So please welcome Stephanie Baker.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm so buzzed to be here. So thank you so much for having me on. I just feel really grateful to be here. So thank you.
Definitely. I think we've got to give a big shout out to Savoy's.
Oh my God. How incredible was that event? That was amazing.
Trust me, like Savoy's know how to throw a good party.
Yeah, I was not well the next day.
No. What was your favourite bit?
Oh, I think when obviously the DJs, they had the whole sound system there with the AV guys.
Yes.
They were so good at getting everybody on the dance floor, everybody moving. Because I think sometimes when you go to those events, it can be a little bit, nobody wants to get on the dance floor. Nobody wants to be the first one, obviously apart from Ted, who's always on the dance floor first. But yeah, I think, the way that it was organized was just incredible. And I think it just takes networking to the next level.
Yeah. So yeah, on that point, networking, how do you sort of network? Like, obviously it's so important because when you meet the right people, they can open the right doors for you also. Mm-hmm. So how do you go about that?
Do you know what? So when I first started my business, I knew that networking was going to be key. And being up in Newcastle, my original idea was to come and do a lot of my networking down south in London, because I thought, well, that's where the big boys are. That's where all the money is. Thinking I could transfer, 100 grand to them is nothing. If I could introduce them and be that point of contact between, the northern properties and, 100 grand for them, popping it into a sort of 3-bedroom mid-terrace, bringing in a decent yield. That was originally my idea. So most of my networking I did down in London as opposed to up in Newcastle. So yeah, it was a little bit of a different way of me getting in. But what I found was, as opposed to getting, the guys that just wanted, or women that wanted the 100 grand properties, I actually ended up finding a lot more bigger time investors that wanted, the bigger deals. So I actually came around to that kind of by accident, really.
Yeah. And how did you know where to network? Like, so London's really far from you. How did you know the right places to be walking into? How do you find out about?
Do you know what? I actually just started on Eventbrite.
Okay.
Started on Eventbrite, Instagram, Facebook. The more people that you meet at networking events, the more you tend to get invited to stuff. So it is literally a snowball effect to, somebody had said, I literally said this to somebody the other day. I was like, if somebody had said to me this time last year that I would travel to London on my own, go to a black tie networking event on my own and not know anybody in the room, I would have gone, Steph, you're mad. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, oh yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I'm off.
Well, you look pretty comfortable. I thought you knew half the room.
Yeah, well, that's the secret, isn't it?
I love that. So you've come all the way from Newcastle. Tell us a little bit about Newcastle.
Do you know what? I love it there. There's the people, the place. Obviously, yes, I know the weather isn't always the best, but the people more than make up for it. It's so friendly. and property prices are a lot cheaper too.
God, I can imagine. When I think of Newcastle, I think of Ant and Dec. Why man? Or Bite Grove.
Yeah.
Do you remember that show?
I do actually. I'm that old. I do remember it. How do you remember it?
Oh, I'm that old as well, innit? I just look good for my age, you know what I'm saying?
I need some what you've been having.
Yes. So, you know, I want to go a little bit about what's your actual niche right now? What's your speciality? What is Steph known for?
So now I've bobbed around a lot of different things, which I think is really good because it gives you a good grounding of a lot of different areas. Right now, I am working in partnership with another company, and we are direct to the developer on assisted living deals. One of the main reasons I chose to go down the assisted living route is obviously at the moment, mortgage rates, interest rates, are crazy. Obviously, I know as we're speaking now, it's great because they're leveling off a little bit, but I wanted something that was going to give my investors a more secure, assured income that was hands off and true passive as it can be.
Yeah. So how does assisted living work?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different types, but the ones that we mainly deal with are Section 117 of the Mental Health Act. So they're people with Alzheimer's, dementia, mental health issues, and they just need that little bit of extra care. So along with, the investors getting great returns, it's also really good because you're actually doing something good for people as well.
Good for the community. You're putting back into it, and you're setting up homes that actually, helping the councils and local authorities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Also, alongside that, you've got some side hustles, right? So what goes on in the background while you do this? So you're doing this partnership.
So going backwards a little bit, I was the Southwest auction manager for a nationwide auction house. I did that for 3 years, got a really good grounding, and obviously during that time I invested quite a bit into my education, and then started up a rent serviced accommodation business. That replaced my income to a point where I was like, look, I'm leaving, I'm just going to focus on that. I already had my own portfolio of buy refurbs, so I then sourced properties for my investors, which was basically what I was doing for myself anyway. That's one of my other businesses.
Amazing. So how does serviced accommodation work?
In a nutshell, I think it depends what area and what niche market you're going into. Mainly for my properties up in Newcastle, it's more tourism. Airbnb, booking.com, people that are looking for, 2, 3, 4 nights breakaway. And I think the key is just making sure that you can get your business systemized so that it's not taking up too much of your time.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I see loads of people do serviced accommodation and showing keys all the time, and this is just perfect. They're in Dubai with the Lamborghini, they're on yachts, and it's just easy. I've got a management company, they do the cleaning, got a booking service. I've got the sound alarm system if the noise goes too loud, or the ringer doorbell, so I know how many people are walking in, and it just looks super easy that anyone can do it. What's the reality?
I think it's definitely not passive. I think having a management company, I think if you're looking to scale is really important. It's not an area that I'm personally looking to scale, so I manage mine myself. But getting it to a point where it's systemized is not, it's a real pain in the ass getting it set up. But once it's there, I think once you have it kind of systemized, it does make life easier, but it's never going to be passive. So
if somebody wants to run their own serviced accommodation right now, like you do, what does that involve?
I would say definitely get educated. I think we're going to be moving into times when it is a little bit harder for serviced accommodation because it is more of an entry level point. So I think the best thing you can do is get yourself educated so that you're doing it to the best of your ability. So you know that you are a step ahead of everybody else and you're a league above the other people that are doing it.
Do you think it's an area where it's gonna get more, there's gonna be more regulation?
I think there needs to be. And I think for me personally, I welcome any more regulation because, people are making a lot of money from this, and I think it should be regulated. So yeah, I think it'll weed out the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. I think it'll be a good thing.
Nice. You mentioned auctions.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit more about auction? Because that's the first question that anyone ever asks a property investor is, shall I buy an auction? Because I think that's where you get all the deals. Behind the scenes, behind the curtains, can you tell us a little bit what it's like? Do you get them amazing deals that the auction house normally takes first? And do you have a special book of clients that they get first picks? Does everything go to the floor? Can you give us some insight?
I love auctions, and I could sit and talk to you all day about auction. Obviously, every different auction house works slightly differently. Obviously, the main principles are the same. We mainly worked with unconditional, which meant that once you put your bid in, if your bid was at reserve, at the end of the auction, you exchanged immediately with a 28-day completion. I love it for both vendors and buyers because it's simple, it's straightforward, there's no messing around. Because you've got a legal pack in there, you get all of that information up front. So you've got your land registry, title deeds, searches, special conditions, everything is already in there. So you can do all that due diligence on the front end, as opposed to a standard resi sale where you don't really do any of that due diligence, and the fall through rate for a standard resi sale is so much higher. To put it into perspective, an auction sale is probably about 1% fall through rate. It's very, very low.
Is a high there's big consequences if you put your 10% down and then you don't complete.
Yeah.
Have you seen that where people have lost that
Do
money?
you know what? More through people's stupidity. It's labeled there clear as day. You're bidding on something it's exactly the same sort of perception as eBay, really. You're putting your offer online, and we'd get a couple of people, oh well, I didn't mean to bid, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. Well, you actually have to click and sign before you're allowed to do that. So sometimes people are just stupid, but that sounds really bad, but on the whole, it was great. People do, I think, because you're making a serious commitment, you tend to, on the whole, work with serious buyers. People don't really mess you around because they're messing themselves around. They do that due diligence, and I think on the back of that, I think the real beauty of it is that auctions will actually show you the true value of a property and show you the true value of where the market's sitting at the moment. Because resi sales can say anything, but the proof is in the pudding, really. What something is actually selling for on the open market today gives you a really good, accurate reflection of what's going on out there.
What does actually guide price mean? Is that what I'm going to be paying for it? Should it be a little bit less, a little bit more? What's going on? What's the auctioneer saying when here's the guide price?
So a guide price is it's a bit of a guide. Normally a property will have a starting bid, and it'll have a reserve. Now, as a bit of a what's the word?
Negotiation?
As a base mark. So the starting bid is normally around 10% below the reserve. So keep that in mind. Normally, you're going to be thinking, right, okay, well, the reserve is obviously what the vendor's bottom line is of what they would take. However, that's not necessarily always the case. If you get to the end day of the auction and you're 10, 15 grand below reserve, a good negotiator will be having a conversation with that vendor and potentially they'd be able to get something sorted for you.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. Tell us a little bit more about the Newcastle market, because there's a lot of people who want to invest in property. And, when I was investing in property, 17, 18 years ago, property prices were very different. 180, 190 would get you a 2-bed. Now you're looking at $500,000 around here. So a lot of people are going, I can't do that anymore. So what do I do? And then what we say is, let's look wider and we see if we can get something managed, from far. So tell us a little bit about the Newcastle market. What are property prices saying there? What are yields?
Booming. Absolutely booming up there now.
Okay.
And I think one of the main contributing factors, along with everything that you said, the Saudi takeover for the football club, for Newcastle United.
Wow.
They haven't just bought a football club. Effectively, they've bought a city. And since they've done the works and the regeneration that is going on up there at the minute is just insane. I went to a networking event back end of last year, and there was a lady there that was speaking from the council, and they were saying, they're working very closely with the Saudis to make sure that obviously the works that are being done, they're very much working intertwined with the council to make sure that the city is going in the right direction to what they want. And it's so exciting. I think really, really exciting.
I can hear that in your voice. Is Newcastle a big place, or are there some bad patches that you could potentially invest in, or where would you sort of say are the gems?
Oh, now you're asking the questions. I think like anywhere, it's got its good spots and it's got its bad spots. The Article 4 area around Newcastle is still relatively small. You can definitely pick up some good bargains. There was a perfect HMO ripe for conversion. I think that went for... it was a bit of a mess. It was a lot of a mess, but that sold for 106,000, and that was for a 4-bed that you could easily turn into a 6-bed.
Wow. And what are rent prices there? Like, how much can you rent a room for?
So up there, they were talking between, let me get this right,
A rough figure.
between 500 and 800 a month per room.
Per room.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So you're going to be clearing about £3,000 for this house. 100,000 might cost you what? You need an £80,000 mortgage, for example, and that won't even cost you 500 quid.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, that had quite a significant refurb, and obviously that's done to a high standard with your en-suites. But yeah, there's some great management companies up there as well. That one in particular that I would definitely recommend, that they have like 20-30 of their own properties that they do as HMOs as well. And what they don't know about converting HMOs and speccing them up is not worth knowing. Like, they are amazing. So it's again, I think it's it's the contacts and who you've got around there that can help you and really capitalizing on that.
I understand. I've got a friend of mine who does invest in Newcastle. Actually, he's always done 1 or 2 projects, and I'm like, why is he going all the way there? That's really, really far, But yeah, I can start to see that. Like, whatever's happening in London can happen in other cities as well.
Yeah.
And I know Liverpool's really, I thought Liverpool, there was nothing happening in Liverpool, but just go down Castle Street and then all of a sudden you're next to the Merseyside, Beatlestown, and you got all these buildings that look like central London, and you're hearing central London prices as well, and you're like, whoa.
It's like, crazy, isn't it?
It is mad.
Yeah.
It's mad. I thought it was just like out in the sticks somewhere, but it's nothing like that. Traveling, because traveling allows you to learn so much. We've just talked about in and around England so far, but I know you're a renowned sort of traveler. I've seen your Instagram stories, so I've seen you all over the show. First of all, what's your favorite country?
Panama.
Yeah,
I think Panama. That was, pretty amazing place.
for what reasons?
I can't describe it. It's a feeling. I think Panama, or a close second would be, I've been to a few different places in Africa, and very, very different. But Panama, because the city is beautiful in itself, but you go, onto some of the islands and you've got some of the most beautiful islands. The people are amazing. They're so friendly. So yeah, definitely Panama. And I would probably say the most eye-opening place that I've ever been that completely changed my perspective in life, I think, is Nigeria. I went to Nigeria and I can't even describe it. Africa just does something to you. And going and seeing, we went to some of the bad parts in Nigeria and seeing that people have nothing. I remember one time so I was over there with somebody who was installing water pipelines into the really poor communities, and we were driving through this slum, and they had at the end of this road, they had like this massive, probably about the size of that, this massive, great big, just like metal like plate, and obviously there was a bit of fire underneath it, and they were cooking away, and they had a car battery, and the battery hooked up to the one light that they had, and they had somebody with a speaker. And everybody from that sort of area would bring a little something for food, and they would have the music on. And wow. Honestly, it was the most humbling thing to see that they had nothing, but they were so happy.
Yeah.
It was the most incredible experience I think I've ever had.
Wow. I think the CEO for Phones for You said I had 2 rules for my kids, and 1, be happy, and 2, leave something for the world.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it's something like that puts things into perspective a lot as well, doesn't it? You know, we talk about first world problems, and, you know, it really brings it home, I think, when you go somewhere like that.
What? I know you love traveling. I can see that. What is it about traveling that you love? Like, what does traveling teach you?
Really good question. I think it makes you very open-minded, I think, to how different people live, how they think, how they interact with each other. If you actually, I think, take the time to study that a little bit as well and immerse yourself in their culture, I think the possibilities are endless, because you then learn how to communicate with people in so many different ways.
How has it changed you?
Oh, that's the question, isn't it?
Is there an experience that you had abroad that you came back a different person that you thought?
Yeah, it would have been Africa. Africa just, it switched something inside me that just was, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It was like I came back woken up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I went to Thailand, I saw, you know, they've had white sandy beaches, lovely clear waters, and, you know, but people had nothing. Like, they were on the road, on the streets, but they're just smiling and says good morning or swadee kap, or, you know, I've been to India as well, and you just think these people have nothing, but they're still so happy, and they're grateful for life. Actually, you might be more happier than me.
Absolutely. I genuinely believe that. I think that simplicity is, I actually find myself a little bit jealous of it sometimes. Do you? Like, do you know what I mean?
I know what you're saying. Sometimes I wish, like, so Spain's quite close to us, and, you know, you've got some nice spots in Spain. I could almost like imagine myself like semi-retired, just all you need. Like, so I went round, so I used to work in this bar. So I used to do some cocktails and flaring and all of that sort of stuff. I've always had a little side hustle. So whether it was McDonald's and got replaced by that, even when I was doing the property stuff, even when I do all of my full time, I love doing something like that just gets me close to, like, I wouldn't say normal people. I don't think that's right to say, but I like to do like your normal job just to know that I'm grounded, you know, and I'm not disrespecting anybody because I'm on a different level. And imagine you're going to your solicitor, I need that completed. Your accountant, can I get my SA 302s? What offer are we put in? Can we? You're directing, and all of a sudden you could go to a restaurant and go, food now, I need it. 2:00, I got next meeting, and you could lose that human ability. And I've seen that in people. So I've always said to myself, like, I hope I never become that person, but not even realize it. So I always had a little side hustle that when somebody else like throws money at me and go, yeah, give me 2 of them, please, mate, and whatever, you know, and I'm like, yeah, cool, I'll do that for you, but I never want to be you. You know, I've always had that sort of realization. So what was the point we was talking about?
I think you learn something from every single person that you meet, though.
Yes, they teach you about yourself as well. I think.
Yeah. Even if it's not a nice, I agree. Like, I don't really believe that there's that many bad people in the world. I think, you know, bad people do good things and good people do bad things. I think in general, I don't think there's many bad people in the world.
Yeah. And I also see how people survive without technology as well, and how manual things are done. I'm like, whoa, we have a machine for that, and you have to like actually really hard work labor, but you turn it into a job. It looks like you're something you enjoy, and it just makes you like realize how sort of sometimes lucky we are, you know.
Does it ever make you worry? Obviously, with AI and obviously the way that the world is, I'm probably going to go on a tangent now.
It's all right.
But yeah, you know, like the manual labor jobs, you know, there's so many people in the world, but how is it sustainable the way that AI is going?
Here's the thing. I think we're actually in a bloody bubble in some sort of matrix. Yeah, okay. That's a little bit crazy, yeah, but I'll tell you my logic, because TikTok shows you everything now. And so it shows you videos from 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, cleaned up so you can hear them properly. And so I keep watching this thing. So I'm like, music. Okay, the new music that comes out are remakes of the 90s and 80s and 70s, and they've beeped up the frequency of music that we listen to now, but it's the same words, same lines. And I'm like, and I'm playing songs, and then my mom's like, oh, that was out in the 80s. Like, what do you mean? And she goes, yeah, there's the original. So cool. All right, cool. That's one thing. Second, fashion. Yes. So 1 minute you got flared, 1 minute you got the piped skinny jeans, 1 minute. And then I keep seeing that, oh yeah, that's come back in fashion, or them ripped, this come back in fashion. I'm like, what do you mean, Dad? He goes, yeah, we used to have that in the, 70s. That's what we used to rock up in. Oh, them black bomber jackets, they come back in. And I'm like, hang on, so that's happened again. And then this other video all of a sudden popped up, and it was interviewing these kids from the 1960s at school, and it was talking about technology.
Yes, I've seen this.
I think you might have seen it. Yeah,
this is so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And this lady's like, well, I don't think that AI I don't think they called it AI, but they called it technologies running, and they're going to take all of our jobs away. And I'm like, hey, hang on, that's 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties. 60 years on, we're still saying the same questions.
Yeah.
Life does move on. We do evolve. Like, imagine talking to a caveman right now and saying, and saying technology is going to make you obsolete.
It's crazy, isn't it? Do you ever drive around, and as you're driving, think, holy shit, like, how did humans do this? Like, especially like coming down to London, I'm like, and there's so many beautiful old buildings, and I'm like, that is insanely beautiful, like how people have done that, like the intricate work and stuff. Honestly, I'll drive around and I'll be like, how did humans do this? It's amazing.
The creativity is an amazing thing. Yeah. I mean, that's a gift that God's given us, is creativity, and be creative, and you can draw, and you could do arts, and I don't know, supposedly people see us as business people or entrepreneurs, but to me it's an art to create houses and refurb houses, and create spaces for, like, social housing, and semi-independent homes, and helping the community. For me, that's creative. That's as creative as I get. Give me a pencil or a sketch pen and stuff, and I'm a little bit, I can't be bothered. But give me something to build. I love designing and building, That's what we do, hey?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think you put it perfectly. I couldn't draw a stick man though.
Tell me, is it any different being a female entrepreneur?
It's a question that I get asked, or have been asked quite often, and I honestly think, bar a few people, most of the people that I've come across have treated me with just as much respect, and I think sometimes it opens a few more doors, sometimes it potentially closes them. So I think it swings and roundabouts in anything.
Could you share an experience where you've walked into a room and you really walked out and felt, if I was a guy, that would have been different, or you felt belittled? Has that ever happened?
Yeah. I remember going to a networking event a few months ago, actually. Wow. And I'm pretty good, like, not blow my own trumpet here. I learned the hard way I won't spend too long with one person. I've done it before. I've ended up, stuck for an hour talking to one person, and there's 30, 40 other people in the room that I've really wanted to talk to, but I've felt too rude to be able to say, like, it was really nice to meet you, but I need to go and talk to other people now. And I was speaking to, I'd walked up and introduced myself to a group of 3 men, and 2 of them were great. And there was an older man, and he, bar shaking my hand, would not engage in any conversation with me. And the one comment that he did make was quite derogatory. And I remember thinking, where do you get off on that? Like, there's no, what are you gaining out of that? But then I think the more confident that I've become doing more networking events, I soon realize it's not me that's the problem, it's them. Because 99.9% of people that I have come across have been amazing. You know, it's only the odd few.
How do you deal with that?
Kill them with kindness. I think, and I know that people say, you know, if you can be anything, be kind. You know, I feel so grateful for where I am and the person that I've become. I've worked hard to be I work hard every day to be the best person that I can be, as cliche as it sounds. And if I can just give people a little bit of positivity, like I always try and, you know, be happy and energetic. And I think if I can even fill somebody's cup a little bit in a day just by engaging and interacting with them, that makes me happy.
I love that. I really do. And that's something my mum also tells me. My dad's a strict business army general guy, which I get the business side from. And then I get this lovely soft personality from my mum. And she'll always be like, don't do that. And I'm like, well, but they did that to me. And she goes, you don't have to be the same. Yeah. Kill them with love. Just love sorts everything out, Sean. Like, she'll always say that to me. Like, just love. And every time I've used it, I've actually got an apology from another person saying, last time I was a little bit out of order. I shouldn't have said this or that. And I'm like, it works. And it works like they look like they're on their knees right now apologizing because they can't handle how you've just sort of forgiven them and said, that's fine. You know, you do you. That's a you problem, not me. Exactly what you said. I do like that. Another thing that I've picked up on, and maybe the audience can't see this at home right now, but you've got a really good physique.
Oh, thank you.
Because that night, I'm telling you, you were like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, at Savoy's event, you had a really, I said, like, because I used to bodybuild and I was like, you train, don't you?
I think that was the first thing you said to me, actually, wasn't it?
I was like, are you a bodybuilder?
You've been working out.
Because it's just one of them things that, like, the gym people do, the gym bros, and, you know, when you're in the gym, it's just like, it's not a thing where you're checking somebody out, like, boy, you know, it's more like, hey,
what'd you lift, bro?
Yeah, how much you benching, innit? That's number one question. But, you know, I also know that, you know, spending time in the gym really does wonders for my mental health, and having different goals. I almost had, you know, more kudos from training. So when I became a millionaire at 26, over 10 years ago, you couldn't really share it or tell nobody, because if you said to one of your mates, oh, by the way, I'm a millionaire, they'll be like, well, good for you, you can't. You know, like, well done on you. You're not changing my life and I don't really care. But when I stepped on stage and I was competing and that Facebook picture came out, everyone was like, Sean, how did you do that? That's amazing. Blah. And it felt like I got more kudos on that sort of side. But really, it was just me and my mind working against these weights and pushing through like other stresses that I had. And that was just the result.
Yeah. It's strange, isn't it? I think the UK, people have got a very different mentality, I think, towards money and people doing well. Have you seen there's a TikTok video, isn't there, where the guy goes and he's like, hey, so how did you afford the car? Like, what have you done? And like, people over there, I feel like, are so well done. Like,
yes,
you're doing amazing. But yet, you know, you're driving not that I drive a Lamborghini, but you drive a Lamborghini in the UK and it's quite a hostile, you know, people are like, oh, you know, you're flaunting your money. Well, you know, when you work hard for it, I think you should be proud of what you've achieved.
Yeah, you've spent years and years of working on your craft to achieve what you wanted, to afford some of them things, and then someone's going to look and step over that just because, well, they might not be doing it for themselves.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You either, ignore it, be happy for that person, because remember, this is the one thing people forget, that when people are on their own journey as well, you need to clap for other people, because one day when you get there, you want other people to clap for you.
Yeah.
If you're not passing that energy on, it's very lonely, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, and sometimes as well, like I think it's easier said than done. Like when you're in a bit of a shit patch and, you feel like everybody else is doing great. And I think social media can be so tough for that as well, can't it? Like nobody really posts as much shit stuff on Instagram. They all want to make out like everything's great, and I think it can, when you are struggling a bit more, I think that can really, well, and I know it did for me, it can make it feel a lot worse.
Yeah, you are right there. I mean, I worked in McDonald's and hard life growing up, and yeah, you get a little bit of attention, but when I show like a little bit of the house or a nice car, then it's like boom, it's blown up. It's like people's like mindsets have changed a little bit to how they think real wealth is. And I think people got to realize, maybe you might agree with this as well, is money doesn't make you happy.
Working on yachts for 6 years, that was probably the biggest thing that I've seen.
Tell us a little bit more about that then.
So I worked on yachts for 6 years. And
what does that mean? Like, it's just like a flashy boat?
Well, these are I worked on private yachts.
Okay.
Absolutely, the money is insane. Like, some of these yachts are just so beautiful, absolutely incredible. But yeah, I remember, it's quite a common saying, isn't it, where you never see a miserable person on a jet ski. I've seen lots of miserable people on a jet ski. And I think it's sad, actually, because I sat and thought one day, you're surrounded by so much wealth, and I actually sat and thought, would I want to swap places with these people? And you would think, yeah, of course I would. I would love to swap my life with them. There was only one family that I ever met that I would want to swap my life with.
Wow, in 6 years?
In 6 years, yeah.
Why do you think these people are so unhappy? Do you think they're chasing something false?
I don't know. I think everybody would obviously have their own reasons, but I could only speak for myself, and I think how would I feel and what would make me feel potentially like that. And I think to not have any goals, to not have any drive, to not have anything that you are striving to achieve, I think whether that be personally, through business, I think if you're just sailing through, I think that would make anybody unhappy. If you don't feel like you've got a sense of purpose and drive and an ambition to better yourself, or a goal, effectively, I think.
What was you doing on these yachts?
So I was a stewardess. I was a chief stew. And again, yeah, traveled to some incredible places, met some incredible people. And again, like, you're working with such diverse crew. You can have South Africans, French, people from all over the world. And they have a lot of different beliefs. They have a lot of different characteristics. The way that they've been brought up, the things that what they deem as, offensive, or that's probably quite a big learning curve, I think, for me as well, because I just, I try and just be happy, and just be, what you see is what you get. Effectively, I always try and just be very open and very honest. And I soon learned that being open and honest probably wasn't the best thing sometimes. But yeah, it was definitely, again, life-changing.
But 6 years working, as a stewardess on, yachts, you must have really enjoyed it for doing it that long.
Yeah, I think when I was obviously very lucky, I had no ties at home. And you meet some, I think it draws a certain type of person, whatever background you're from. I think it draws quite free spirits, if that makes sense. So a lot of the people that you'll meet within the yachting industry, they've all got a similar sort of mindset, which is really, what's the word? Really invigorating. It's probably the best word. But yeah, it was. Just remind me what the question was again. Sorry.
How come you was a stewardess for so long on a yacht?
Oh, it's for so long because, again, I didn't have any ties, but the travel was amazing. The people that you met along the way. I've got some friends that are life friends now that I would never have had the opportunity to meet had I not gone down that route. Everyone has a similar sort of mentality. But yeah, the travel, I've been to some incredible places.
So do you get like a day off where you get to explore where you've stopped off and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what your owners are doing, whether they're on board. If you've got owners on board for 3 months, you're working for 3 months. You're there for them. They pay a lot of money and they pay you very well as well. So sometimes, depending where we were, we would have a couple of days layover. That'd be amazing. We get to go and explore. But yeah, there's a lot of times where I've been to so many beautiful places, but I've just been able to sort of peer over the deck and just, it looks really beautiful, but never actually get to explore it. But I'm not moaning about that because I went to visit some incredible places as well. So yeah, yes. The travel was amazing.
Being out on sea can be unpredictable as well. Tell us one of the scariest moments or a difficult situation that you had to be on, that, because I've been on a plane that's like, like gone through a bit of turbulence and I thought, this is it. I'm done. Yeah. So you must have had a few moments.
It was the one that sticks to mind. I just joined a 50 meter and we were in Cuba, and we'd just done a crossing, a med crossing. So we'd gone across and got to Cuba, and it was the first time that I was going to be meeting the owners, and I was really nervous. They came on board. First day everything was absolutely fine. They took us out for a meal. This was Christmas Eve. They took us out for a meal and it was beautiful, really nice family. And Christmas Day, they decided they were going to do Cuba to Costa Rica. And the weather wasn't great. And I get seasick, which isn't great. You'd think, how can you get seasick and do the job I do? Well, yeah. So we started the crossing and I was feeling a little bit not great. You get on with it, and things got pretty bad. It was like 3 meter swells, and it was not fun. And
3 meter.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
so this room's about 1 meter, right?
I know. Oh, it's making me feel sick thinking about it. And
and so do you have to sit and stay buckled in or something when that happens?
It's not fun. So obviously, because I was head of the interior, so obviously there's a lot of expensive things that you don't really want to get knocked over. So we had to try and close everything down as best we could. Luckily, the guests were not feeling great either. But at a point, I was on the aft deck with a bucket wrapped around me, and for 10 hours straight, I couldn't move. I was woman down. If somebody had said to me that I either have to serve guests or jump overboard, I was off that boat. I couldn't think of anything worse. And it was so bad because it was Christmas Day. The chef had prepared such an amazing meal.
So does that mean food went everywhere as well? And
yeah, it wasn't, well, obviously everything gets strapped down, so it wasn't too bad, but when the chefs had spent days and days preparing everything, and it all just, it was not a good day. But that was a bad one, and you feel so bad. It's Christmas Day as well.
Yeah, seas are unforgiving. Nature is unforgiving. Yeah. You just think everything's just you can handle it, and then that sea chucks you around like anyone's. It
makes you realize how minuscule you are, I think. But doing the crossing was incredible because you could, I've never seen stars like it. Like, you see the stars and they are just, you've got no light pollution, you're sort of 15 days out, and that was so beautiful, really beautiful.
Talking about experiences, sometimes life throws you a curveball. You think like everything's going all perfect and you're doing you don't realize how normal life is when you're just doing life. Sometimes you're like going to the gym, going to see my partner, and you're just going normal, and you think, yeah, maybe it could be a little bit better, maybe I could do a bit more of that, and then all of a sudden something comes that disrupts everything, and it just turns your brain upside down. You think, well, didn't see that coming, and it really does reshape you as a person. Can I ask you, of course you've had curveball moments, but
yeah, I think like everybody has, and I feel quite grateful that I've had, you know, great friends around me, great family, and I've not had any sort of horrific things that I can name that have happened that have really kind of thrown my world upside down. Or if they have, I tend to have a bit more of a selective memory, so the bad stuff just gets put in a box and I don't think about that. But I think the curveballs, I think it's more, you know, if one thing happens in one period of time, then that's fine. But it's when things don't happen like that, do they? Everything happens in threes. Like if you're gonna have a bad day, you're gonna crash your car as well. You're gonna break a finger. Like whatever's gonna go wrong. And it's like serviced accommodation as well. Like I've had, you know, through all of my units, I can go through a month and have like hardly any guest communication. Yeah. Everything is great. And then in one day, I'll get 3 different guests in 3 different properties, all have big issues. I'm like, why all in one day? What's going on in the water? But yeah, regarding like massive curveballs, I think I've been quite lucky in life, if that makes sense, compared to a lot of people. I've not lost that many loved ones yet, touch wood. Like I said, I've got great family, great friends. Struggles wise, I think the biggest thing for me when I started my own business, I don't know, do you want to go into this now? Yeah. I think you start going into very much, you know, following people and listening to people, and they all say, you know, entrepreneurship and, you know, have your own business, and you don't want to work for somebody else because, you know, you're just making their money. And when I started my own business, I very much tried to sort of take on that mentality, and I wanted to have my own business, and I didn't want to work for somebody else, didn't want to make somebody else money. And so I threw myself into, you know, starting my own business and, you know, doing what I thought was right, because people tell you that, people, you know, it's what you do when obviously you're following the same accounts, you follow the type of accounts that, you know, are doing what you want to do. And you hear the same thing, you know, entrepreneurship and, you know, having your own business is so important. And I tried so hard to believe that was the right thing for me. I actually wasn't going to talk about this. I had a mental breakdown probably about 8 months ago, and it was over something I had no idea it was coming. I just sent over the money on a property that I bought, and I went round to a friend's for dinner and just broke down, and I was like, what the hell is going on? I had to leave my friends. Thought maybe it was just the environment that I was in. Got home, couldn't stop crying, and I was like, what the hell? It's Steph, like what on earth is wrong with you? Like why can't you pull yourself together and start crying? Eventually got to sleep, woke up in the morning, and like I don't cry that often, and woke up in the morning sobbing. I was like, what the hell is it? Like there wasn't really anything even wrong in my head. I thought that I was fine. Went to the gym, couldn't stop myself crying in the gym. I must look like a right weirdo, sobbing away, pulling weights up. And in the end, I drove up to my mum's, sobbed all the way up to my mum's, and I was like Googling like, what the hell's wrong with me? And turned up at my mum's, and my mum was like, what on earth has happened? What's happened? And I was like, nothing's happened. And she's like, well, clearly something's happened. And I was like, but that's the problem. Nothing's happened. I just sort of started Googling it. And then I realised after that, yeah, I was having a mental breakdown. And no one prepares you for that. I don't think anyone prepares you for that. No one prepares you for, I just thought, I'd be fine in a few days. And it wasn't. It was probably a month of really not seeing how I was going to get out of it. Having my own business, because your business is effectively an extension of yourself. And I think at that point I realised that there was a lot of things I needed to work on myself, and my business wasn't going to get any better unless I worked on them myself. And yeah, it's something that I've wanted to speak about, but I haven't, because I haven't, I guess, either been given the opportunity or not felt like it was the right thing or the right time. And here I'm talking about it now. But yeah, I don't think, especially for people that are starting their own business, I don't think the help and support is out there for people that maybe do, for a bit like me. Like, I had no idea what was going on. And I'd love to, in the future, maybe be in a position to sort of help people out and, support them through something. Because I wish I'd had somebody to sort of tell me, this is what this is. And, maybe somebody said to me, maybe business just isn't for you, having your own business isn't for you. And I remember when this person said that, I took such offense. Like, I was furious. Like, of course it is. And I think, actually, looking back now, that probably was a tough bit of pill to swallow. And at that point, then realizing that you don't have to do everything on your own. Because up until that point, I'd done everything myself. And that was probably the biggest mistake that I made, was that I didn't either trust anybody or want anybody else to come into my business. And that was why it wasn't doing as well as it should have done. But yeah, I think after I kind of realised that and sort of focused on, right, okay, well, there's clearly something not right here. I actually took on board that advice a lot better and started to pivot my business and, find, at that point I was like, okay, well, I need to bring somebody into my business. I realised at that point, and then I knew that I needed to be the right person, hence which has led me to where I am now, working in partnership with another company. And honestly, I'm so much happier, I can't tell you.
When people go into partnerships, Stephanie, it's a really sensitive one, because you could jump into bed with the wrong person, business wise is what I'm talking about. You could think that somebody is a certain something, they're going to add a certain something to your business, add value, and then after for 3-4 weeks things start to crumble, or even 4-5 months it could be, because you've both been brought up differently with different worth ethics. You've got a different vision. How do you find out the right person to go into partnership with? Like, how do you know that's a good decision? Obviously you've made a right decision, but what was your sort of fact finding to making sure that you've latched on with the right person?
Call me stupid or call me gullible, but for me it was gut, and I can't explain it. Like, I was offered some amazing opportunities from companies that on paper sounded amazing, and a lot of people would have jumped at the chance. I, on paper should have jumped at the chance, but just something, gut instinct, something just said no. And I do listen to my gut a lot of the time. And this just feels right.
That's amazing you say that point, because like there's so much, so many things we can't really explain. Do you know what I mean? Like the book doesn't teach you your gut feeling. And a lot of the time when I've made a lot of my decisions, somebody goes, well, why don't you want to go with me? Or why don't you want to do this job? Or why shouldn't I do it? My gut's telling me, like, and I think your gut's like something that you won't be able to see and read, but you'll feel it. Yeah. It's like, I know a camera's there, I know you're here, but my brain patterns will know if there's something that's changed in the room, even if I can't see it. Do you know what I mean? And that's something it won't teach you. I was watching this scientist, this lady, this doctor, and it was just like really, really interesting about how amazing the body is as well. And it's like, did you know that if you end up living with another female, that within very quickly, within weeks or a month or something, you'll have the same menstrual cycle?
Yeah. You think, and that used to happen on the yachts all the time as well.
Really?
Yeah.
My God.
The poor deckies on their yachts.
But they said the alpha female, it would all follow the alpha females.
I didn't know that.
So you would know if your cycle changed to somebody else's, then you're not the alpha.
I've never actually thought about that. But yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and they actually said that men are programmed a certain way as well. So in today's society, we brought up very, a man should be with one woman, live happily ever after sort of thing. But men do think differently. Mm-hmm. And sometimes a man could end up going out and doing something in society that doesn't seem acceptable, but it's something that a guy doesn't love that woman or doesn't really want to be with that woman. It's just that hormone going on in his brain. And so this doctor was saying that men who ventured too far sometimes from the cave, if they found another cave with other, women there, he would just naturally just end up staying there. Or, especially through winter time, the whole reason why women's menstrual cycle changed in sync is so that he could breed with sort of every single one of them to make sure that his alpha gene was definitely passed on in terms of survival. Can I ask you, I know this is a little bit off topic, but what do you think of that? The way men are programmed, and mental health is a big thing, and there could be a guy who's really loyal to a woman, really loves her, has kids with her, but then also has this sort of urging hormones going in him. Is that addressed? Because we do address certain things that other things like LGBT, they feel a certain way, so they dress a certain way, how they want to be pronounced. We've accepted all of these other things that some people go, whoa, why are you even teaching that in school? But men feel that's all. What's your opinion on that?
It's so true, and I have heard as well that men find women more attractive in different stages of their menstrual cycle as well. So that was quite fascinating. I think different. I lived in France for 4 years, and France, the way that they have relationships together is very different, very more open-minded.
What does that mean?
I think France is just a lot more open-minded with a lot of different things. Mainly from what I saw, relationship-wise, they're very much more open to trying different things, communicating different things. Had some really good friends from France, and they're a lot more open. In England, we're very closed off about what we do or what we do with our partners, and in France, they're very much the opposite. And I love that. I think we can, as Brits, can definitely take something away from that. But with regards to, men straying and the hormones and stuff, I think women could be, I don't think it's just a man thing. I think women can be potentially just as bad. But I think the problem with what I see is people don't communicate. I think people don't communicate either because they don't know how to, or because they're scared to, or they communicate, but they communicate in the wrong way. And I think communication is key, as the saying goes.
I've heard the phrase that women just actually respects and loves a man more for being just honest and telling them straight.
Yeah. Just for a woman, for a guy just to take the lead. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but from my perspective, a man that can lead and be assertive and give clear boundaries and clear rules without being narcissistic or I think is, I think it's become very much, women empowerment and women are independent. And I think all that's great. And again, I'm only speaking for myself here. I think all of that's great. But underneath it all, I mean, me personally, I would love to just be able to come home to someone and then be like, I've got this. I've got you. I've got this. And to actually, I think if they don't give you boundaries, and actually, well, no, that's not acceptable, Steph. Like, I'm not going to put up with that, because otherwise you do push. And I think actually having a real strong masculine male figure makes it a lot nicer to come home to, a lot more peaceful.
Mm-hmm. Do you think men and women are equal?
No, I don't. I think there's certain things that women do a lot better than men, and I think that there's certain things that men do a lot better than women. And I think, I know that, again, women empowerment, it's very much, I think, becoming a hot topic recently for, women to be strong, independent women. And I think that's great. Mm-hmm. But, for the most part, we still want men to open doors for us, pull chairs out for us. And, I think we can't have it both ways.
I mean, like you might take a chick out for dinner and she's like, he has to pay. But then for a guy will be thinking, well, I might do this 50 times until I meet the one or somebody who's really interested in me. But for you, you've just got to turn up. How is that fair? Yet at the same time, if I don't do this bit, then you're not much of a man. And then at the same time, oh no, but everything else is equal. It's a bit like it's a pick and choose, and it doesn't feel like that's really spoken about. And it's like, hey, if I choose to split the bill with you, it doesn't mean I like you any less. I just want to know you're vested in this as well, just as much as me. And later on down the line, I don't mind getting you. And look after you and making you feel like the one. But right now, we're both finding out. But that seems like a bit of a sort of taboo sort of subject.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's so many different opinions. I speak to some girls and they're like, no, like, I want the man to pay. And I think from my perspective, I think a man paying shows their assertiveness and they're taking the lead, as opposed to not necessarily, it's not the money, it's that taking the lead. But again, when you talk about the equality thing, I do as a woman want to be able to take that bit of a step back and be it. I think especially when you're in business as well, it can be you've got to play such a sort of masculine role that actually I just want to be able to come back and roll around in my feminine energy instead. So yeah, I think it is a bit of a taboo subject, isn't it? And I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer. Some men, I think are very much, no, it's, women have other things that they're, really good at and what I would expect from a woman. But I take the lead and I pay and I do this, but this is what I expect in return. And I think this is where men and women do have different roles. And I think it's communicating between two different people what their rules and what their boundaries are and what they're happy to accept and what they expect from somebody.
Do you think there is inequality of pay between men and women?
I've heard this. It's not something that I have looked into too much, to be honest. So I wouldn't really want to give too much of an opinion on. But I mean, especially in the property industry, I think personally, I don't think that there's a boundary. I think if you're providing a service, from most people that I speak to, you're providing a service, whether you're a man or a woman. If you're providing a good service, you get paid the same. Well, you put what prices you want to, charge for something. So I don't think that there is too much within the property industry, but I could be wrong there.
I suppose what also you're saying is, like, behind the scene, no one knows if that's a man or a woman who's renting that sort of apartment. So can I ask you a little bit more about how do you brand yourself and your company, and how do people perceive that, and what thought process goes in behind when you use colors, fonts, and how people see your company or business, and which end of the market are you pitching to?
Yeah, do you know, that's a really good question, and it's something that I actually haven't focused on probably as much as I should. I know that there's, some people that will take months to get their website set up and months to get their logo sorted. For me, I was always more focused on me being the brand of the business, so that people knew me. And if they knew me, it didn't really matter what business it was, because obviously I've got the serviced accommodation, the assisted living, the sourcing stuff. So I think for me, I wanted to be the brand. I wanted to be the face of my brand, and I am the business, if that makes sense. So for me personally, the logos and the websites and stuff, yes, they're really important. But I wanted me to be the face of it, and me to be what people remember. So things like, I know Richard Branson, for example, obviously, yeah, everybody knows him for Virgin, but they know him as Richard Branson. A lot of these big guys, they're known for being that person, not necessarily for any one company.
Yeah, I know this one guy as well, Sean Land. No, I get it. What is that magic thing for you in this sector? Is there a number that you're trying to achieve of properties? Is there you just want to keep, scaling your model? Or is this a cash flow overall to start something else that you're more passionate about, or building something like a product or some sort of service? Well, what is the end goal?
So for me, I used to breed, train and show horses.
Yes, quarter
horses, yeah.
So they call quarter horses because they run quarter of a mile fast.
The fastest horse over a quarter of a mile.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they're basically the border collies of the horse world. Like originally they were bred for working on the ranches, herding the cattle.
They look beautiful.
They're amazing. They're honestly the most intelligent, and I could talk to you all day about horses.
Please do. Tell us a little bit
yeah,
more.
like for me,
Educate
like
us.
I think everybody has got. I always believe that everybody has a talent, and it's whether or not they find that talent and they embrace that talent. For me, I remember one of the first memories that I have, even as a kid, was looking into this. I used to run away, and like there was this big field with all these horses in, and I would just sit and look at these horses, and they would all come up. And I remember looking into this horse's eye, which sounds really cheesy, and I was like, that's it. Something happened at that moment, and then I was hooked on horses ever since. But obviously, I could never afford horses when I was younger, and then eventually we had a few different things happened, and I could get a pony, but it wasn't. That one was actually really good. But then we started going to the horse markets, and we would buy a horse that was like destined for the meat market. And at that point, I had a bit of a decent eye of like what was a half decent one, what was not, or could be, had potential. So we would buy the meat market horses. I would then fix the issues and make them better, and then sell them on for a profit. So we would do that.
So how much would you buy a horse for typically and sell it on for?
We did one. I bought one for 250 quid.
Oh, wow. You can buy a horse for 250 quid?
Well, you could then.
Oh,
I don't know if you can do now. And I think I sold it on for like 4 or 5 grand.
Wow.
About 6 months later.
Wow. So if we're talking back then, that's a lot of money then.
Yeah. And, I've really enjoyed doing it as well. And starting the youngsters was always my favourite part, because you can get on a baby that's never been sat on before, and you teach them to do something.
Break them in.
Yeah. And then you teach them to do something, and then you come back the next day and you get on them, and they're like, look, Mum, I remember. And they're trying to do what you taught them yesterday, because that to me is, that's
how do you stay on a horse that doesn't want you on its back? It's like, what the hell's going on?
Well, you just try and make sure that it likes you having on its back before you get on. You do a lot of groundwork before.
Have you ever fell off a horse?
Yeah. Luckily, I haven't really broken too many bones, but had a few bad ones. I had one stand on my neck once.
Stand on your neck?
Yeah, I thought it was goner then.
Wow, because that's a big, heavy animal.
Yeah. It was a stubborn mare, that one was.
Did you just get straight back up, or was you like A&E?
No, weirdly, I wasn't injured. It was the weirdest thing. Like, I can't explain it. I feel like that's definitely one of my 9 lives has gone there. But yeah, that was, no, I didn't get back on that one actually. I left that one for a few hours. I did get back on it later on in the day, but yeah, that was a bit of a
It's not really easy to run a horse as well though, is it? Because you've got to get hay, you've got to break the carrots up and all of that, and then you have to muck out every single day.
Bit. I used to love all the mucking out and the sweeping the yard, and yeah, all that to me is part of it. Yeah. And I love that side of it as well, you know, getting up early in the morning, you know, just the smell of a horse is just, yeah, it's the best. You're like, no.
I used to have, I used to be quite close to a one horse called Star, because it used to have the white thing. Yeah, so that's and it was Star, original. And we used to muck out and really look after. And on holidays, I always go horse riding.
Do you?
Because they're always like really well trained. Mm-hmm. The one in Cancun went a bit nuts though, because there was what is do they play polo with horses? Right?
Oh yeah.
Because they were playing polo, we were sidetracking away, and I think they got the memory of start trotting this funny way, and I think it didn't like one of the horses that was playing, and it just reared up all the way. It had to be my horse, right? So it was up in the air, and I'm like, oh, my feet have come out of the and I'm just like, I'm hanging on, and they were like, hang on, we're coming. And then I was like, yeah, hurry up, mate. And he's coming down, he's doing it again, rearing up, and basically when I got back to base, one of the guys goes, was it your horse that was jumping up? I was like, yeah. And he goes, have you done this before? I was like, not really, once or twice. And he goes, you did really well. I think I would have fell off the way he was rearing up. And I was just like, I think the gym helped me, just hang on for dear life, but yeah, I like horses, but I'm not sure they like me, So your point, so is that something you'd like to go back into at some stage?
Yeah, so my dream is I want to have a farm or a house with land, ideally buy like an old derelict farm with like 10-20 acres, with loads of outbuildings. I would do the house up and live in the house, and some of the other outbuildings I would turn into like serviced accommodation units, and then the other side I would do like a big American barn and have a livery yard there as well for other people to have their horses, and I would have everything like a really high spec, so like solarium, horse walkers, indoor and outdoor arenas, and then what I would love to do is, once all that is set up, that's effectively 2 businesses. I would love to do hosting like events, weddings, corporate events, so you could have people stay in the apartments, there'd be like a hairdresser's, a bar, the marquee and everything, and you can even do like horse ride, people can go up the aisle with the horse, or stuff like that. That's the dream.
Wow, it sounds amazing. It's funny that you said before all of this is we all are born with some sort of gift, and when you looked into that horse's eyes, you knew like you wanted to do something around horses. And it's just funny how 99% of society will just go to work, come back home and be uninspired, even though they do have dreams, but people won't take action.
It is, isn't it? It's the action, I think, and that's I think probably the saddest thing in the world, isn't it? That people just don't embrace something that they're passionate about, or they don't search to find what they're passionate about. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. I think there's got to be something special that's happened in your journey for you to be awake and to be aware. Awareness is massive. You're self-aware, you know what you're doing and where you want to go. A lot of people don't have that. For me, it was something outside of the system of what everyone else did. Was growing up in my dad's shop, and I spoke to people and pricing up and VATs and stuff, and that led me onto being a born entrepreneur. Do you know what I mean? I don't know anything else apart from being an entrepreneur. Ever since I've even bought a property at 21, I was an entrepreneur. Even when I was working for a corporate company, and it's 26, it just felt so natural being an entrepreneur. Now, building business after business, it's just like easy, but trying to instill that into somebody else it's a very different thing. It's almost disbelief. The first thing you get is that's not possible, and I'm like, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Forget that person, move that person and speak to that person. Is that, no, I can't talk to that person, they're not reachable.
Yeah.
Why not? I'm talking to them. Like, it can be. So what I'm trying to get to here is, I want to go back in time a little bit, and I want to find out who young Stephanie was, really.
I didn't have a great upbringing. It's no sob story. My mum is incredible, but I don't have any other family. My mum's my only family. And my mum is my rock. If I can be half the woman that my mum is, I'll be proud. She's just incredible, you know, what she's done to give me the upbringing that, you know, to look after me. And yeah, she's just been a true inspiration. I think for me, I don't want to let her down. I want to make sure that she's proud of me, and I know that she is. But yeah, she's the reason why I think I push so hard to not, you know, she always said, you know, you can do anything that you want if you put your mind to it. And I truly believe that.
What was she like at school?
I was bullied at school.
For what?
Can I talk about this on here? So
You can talk about anything on here. Come on.
I once, you know, when it was really fashionable to have like the little tendrils that girls used to have. Right. Anyway, I'd gone home one day and I'd cut these little tendrils in, and I'd accidentally cut them too short. And I knew that my mum would be really mad. So stupidly, I thought, well, if I just cut it off here, it'll be fine. So I cut it off there, and I just had like a great big bald patch in the middle of my head. I went downstairs and my mum went ballistic. So then we had to go to the hairdressers, and the hairdressers cut me in this fringe, a really thick fringe. But the problem was that it curled out that way. So I went to school the next day, and my surname at the time, well, that was another surname, but this one, obviously because it like all curled out, they called me Stephanie Fanny Fringe. And that stuck all the way through secondary school.
Oh no. How did that make you feel?
You kind of, up north, I think it's, I don't know, maybe it's a bit different, but you kind of just have to laugh it off, because the minute you make out like you're upset about something is the time that it gets worse, isn't it? So you just try and like laugh it off, and inside you're like, that's awful. And it sounds like, you know, it's only a little thing now, but you know, as like a girl growing up,
it's
like
quite cringe, actually.
Yeah, it's
not nice to be you know objectified like that just because something's wrong with you. Like I mean, not wrong with you, but
there was something wrong with me. Why would I cut it up there? I definitely needed my head examining after that.
I mean, did you grow up with just your mum?
No, there were other people around. My granddad died when I was probably about 15, 16.
Did you have a father figure around?
He was probably the closest thing I had to a father figure. But I think at the time I didn't really, I grieved it weirdly, like this, and this is going to sound so awful to say, but I remember being at the funeral, and I wanted to laugh, and it was like I was like, why would I feel like that? Like my granddad, it was awful. And then I felt so awful, and then it was only probably more recently that you realise that everybody deals with things in different ways, and people react to things in different ways. But yeah, and I think I was probably really ashamed as well. Like, why do I feel like I want to do that in such an awful time and awful experience? But yeah, like you just got to learn who you are as well, haven't you? But yeah, my granddad was probably my closest thing to a father figure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel there's something deeper there in your childhood, because you're a very hardworking, driven woman, like, you know, and I feel sometimes is when you don't feel like enough when you're younger, you're always trying to prove yourself time and time again.
Yeah. There was some not nice people around that didn't treat my mum very nicely. And I think seeing that makes you want to look after her, if that makes sense. And I want to protect her, and I've always felt like a really strong need to try and protect my mum, to make sure that she's okay. So yeah, I think growing up and being around that definitely gives you that sort of fire in your belly, I think, as well. So yeah, and yeah, that was the fire in the belly that I think that I needed to give me that, you know, and I think my mum's very entrepreneurial as well. So I seen that in her.
What did she do?
She actually used to work for Pedigree for the dog food. She bred and shown dogs for years and years and years. She was a top breeder. She was very good at what she did, and yeah, used to work for Pedigree Chum.
Wow. And you went into horses.
I know. Well, my mum used to be into horses before, and then she had a bad fall and broke her back, and they didn't think she'd walk again.
Wow.
So it was only more recently that we sort of, when I got back into the horses, well, my mum actually had skin cancer, and they didn't know whether she would pull through.
Right. Okay.
And because things weren't great at home, my mum wanted to make sure that I had something if the worst happened, and that's when she bought my first horse. So that's probably where the horse side of things came in. I think she knew that if anything happened to her, life wouldn't have been very easy for me, but at least I would have the horse if I didn't have anything else. So yeah, my mum, she's always been very entrepreneurial, very much wanted to sort of follow in her footsteps in that respect.
Okay, so what was some of your first side hustles or first experience of work?
Oh, my mum got me into chickens. We had some chickens, and I used to have to keep books for the eggs and like everything that went out. So like I bought a chicken coop, and I had saved up all this money to begin with, and I think it was like £100, and I bought a chicken coop and bought some chickens, and then I had to buy all the chicken pellets and the feed for them, and yeah, I had this little book, and then we would sell the eggs, we'd see how much we had in this little pot. Yeah, that was probably the first thing that I was like...
I don't think I've ever heard that one before. I bought a chicken and we farmed some chickens and sold the eggs, and did you make a profit?
Yeah, they paid for themselves. I mean, I wasn't going to become a millionaire from it, but
so you're like, you can stay here for long as you get, you pay your way.
And obviously, the minute that they're not laying eggs anymore, the axe was out, and that was it.
Like, right, we're having chicken today.
Yeah, and yeah, it was that brutal. I remember as a kid, like we must have had these like we incubated these cockerels. So obviously, as they've got older, like they're not doing anything; they're just fighting and not laying eggs.
Right, we have a boiler today.
So yeah, and my mum went up with the axe one day, and I remember I must have been going through like a hormonal stage. I must have loved these chickens or something, and I remember it's probably one of the biggest barneys I've ever had with my mum, and I'm hanging on to the axe. I'm like, you can't murder them, you can't murder these cockerels. And mum was like, get off, like you're gonna hold it too, like we'll chop its head off. And I remember like sobbing hysterically that my mum was murdering these cockerels, and then I had to eat it for my dinner.
That's torture. First we got to kill it, then we eat the evidence.
yeah my beloved cockerels. But yeah, so I think that was things like that I think are really important. It's like the discipline side as well, isn't it? You know, and I think it's really important, you know, if and when I ever have kids, you know, I want them to know where their food comes from, and, you know, be aware that that is how it should be done. And yes, I didn't like it, but that is how it should be done to me. It's far better for something to have lived a good life like that than, you know, you see all these battery chickens and, you know, you have no idea what you're eating, and the life that they've had has not been very nice. And I think I'd far rather... Do you think that chicken tastes different when it's free ranged like that? Mm-hmm. What's the difference? It's not pumped full of water for a start, but yeah, it actually tastes like chicken. Like, you know, if you ever go to a supermarket and you get like the really expensive free range bio chicken, it does taste different. Like the corn-fed ones, they do taste so much better. And you know that, I think the good thing as well is like, you know that they've had a good life, and that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah. The thing about chicken, I remember my dad, like, we bought some chicken, we put it in the shed at the back, and I remember him putting the wings back, and as he clipped the wings in one hand, they naturally just put their neck down. They're literally, and he went chop, and then the head just starts jumping up and down, and he's like, give me a second. It's like that thing could fly off me. Like,
oh no, and then there's blood spurting everywhere.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, and then they just slowly calm down. It's like, rah, like, but yeah, I could never. I don't even know why. I don't even like touching them.
Probably traumatized.
Yeah, like even the feet. It's like, it's like I think they're gonna claw me out or something. God knows. Okay, so that was one of your first side hustle sort of thing. So that taught you a little bit about bookkeeping. And when did you like go into like a part-time job into a place where it was a little bit more civilized?
Yeah, so my mum used to, working for Pedigree, she used to have a stand at one of the local dog shows that was like most weekends. And I would always go and help her. But I would never, she would always want to pay me, and I wouldn't. That was the biggest thing for me to get my head around. I wanted to do it because I wanted to help and I wanted to be nice. And Mum was like, no, but I want to pay you. And I was like, no, but I don't want you to pay me. I just want to do it because I want to help. And I understand now what she was trying to get at with that. But at the time, I just wanted to be doing something that was useful and helpful. So part-time jobs and stuff, I then, as soon as I could drive, because we lived sort of in the countryside, as soon as I could drive, that was it. I had a job working in a bar. And then I was like, well, I needed more bar jobs. So worked from one to another. And then at one point I had like 3 different bar jobs. It was just the easiest thing that you knew that you could make money from and, you know, work hard and get paid.
Did you study, like go into further education at all?
No, I left school at 16. So we used to show the quarter horses quite a lot around that time as well. And I remember I would be revising in the back of the lorry while my mum was driving back on a Sunday night at like 9-10 o'clock, and then I'd have my GCSE results, like the exams the next day. So I don't know, I was never very academic. I was always in like the lowest set at school, and I struggled. I didn't really like school. I struggled with it. But yeah, I as soon as I left school at 16, I thought that was it. I was going to go and train horses for the rest of my life.
Did that do anything to you by seeing that the schooling system, that essentially you're at the bottom?
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody feels good about that, do they? And obviously, if you're being bullied on top of that as well, it's not a great thing. But I mean, the bullying wasn't terrible. It wasn't, you know, I've heard a lot of people have had it a lot worse. But I think when you talk about the educational system now, I think the more people talk about it now, obviously I think there's so many flaws and everybody you speak to, like, when do you ever use the Pythagoras theory? Whoever uses that? But they don't teach you business, they don't teach you money management, and those are the things that are the most important things. And you know, you look around you now and like, how many of your friends can't manage their own money? And I think that should be one of the most staple things that you're taught, really.
I know accountants who study accountancy don't know how to manage their money. You know? I had people, when I was working in banking, I used to look after multi-millionaires, and they used to come in like 250,000 or 300,000 every 6 months, like would drop in because they were in the oil brokering business. I'm like, yeah, my bonuses come in, put 100 in my current, do this, do that. And it was all gone. It was like, yeah, I'm buying that car, I'm renting that big flash house that's costing me 6-7 grand a month. And it was just like gone before they could even see it. And then they're going, yeah, I'm going to put that on the credit card. It's like, you've just had 300 grand in, bro. Your basic is 250. You're earning 500,000. And then, you know, I've had people with a lot of money and then they go, and they've come to the end, like, where I'm going to go bankrupt right now. And I'm like, well, shaft that off, this. Shuffle everything in place again. They go, you sure you can do this? I'm like, yeah, we'll take a mortgage out, pay that old one. You've got enough equity. We'll pay these debts off. We'll do it this way. You need to listen to me. Yeah. And then we'll do it that way. And in 6 months, they're high flying, bank balance all full again, credit cards paid off. And they would just come back to me and go, like, wow, like you've just literally sorted my life. And I'm like, you're the easiest person to work with, because the hardest thing is to turn the tap on with that money coming in.
Yeah.
Obviously, if people have got debts and got nothing coming in, they're up against it. But money management isn't really taught in school, to be honest. So my question here to you, Stephanie, is I'm 16 or 18 right now, and I want to do something to do with business. I don't want to be a solicitor or an accountant or a brain surgeon, so I don't need none of them skills. But I want to be some sort of business person. Do I go and do a business management degree and spend 10,000 a year and have a 30,000 debt over my head, or do I do plan B and go out and work in the real world and try work it out that way, or an apprenticeship? Or what would you do? Or what would you say? Because you're seeing it from a different angle as well.
Yeah, and God, if I could do things again different, I would do it very differently. But I think the biggest thing that I would ever say to somebody at that age is, if there's something that you are passionate about that you can make money from, even if ideally if you're passionate about it, or find something that you're passionate about it and find a way that you can make money from it, amazing. But the most important thing is, once you've chosen where you're going to go and work for somebody that you admire, somebody that is in the top of their game. Even if you're going and working it for free and then you go and have to, take an evening job, to be around somebody that is doing what you want to do and doing it so successfully, I don't think you're ever going to get better training than that. You can do all the degrees in the world, but are they going to really teach you what somebody else is already doing? Like, if you can go and learn from that person that's doing it successfully, surely the world's your oyster.
That's a good take, to be honest. Also want to ask you is, has there been a time where you thought you've like really failed?
Yeah. After I had the mental breakdown, and I realised that the way that I was running my business wasn't sustainable and I couldn't do it. I felt the most awful sense of failure, because I wasn't doing what other people told me or told me success looked like, if that makes sense. That was probably the biggest. It took a long time and it was a very bitter pill to swallow, to figure out that isn't how my success looked. And I needed to work with other people. And I think, for whatever reason, I was a little bit sketchy about wanting to work with other people as well. And yeah, that was probably the lowest point for me, realizing that what you're told should be the only way forward isn't. That was a big,
Knowing what you know now about failing and failure and coming out the other end, how do you see failure?
I think the only way that you can fail is if you give up. And giving up, I think, can be a good thing in some respects. But when I say giving up, I mean, I've pivoted my business in a lot of different directions to try and figure out where is right. But even if I had gone back and started working in a normal job again, that I don't think is failing. If you know and you've tried and you have given it everything and you're not happy, why keep doing something that makes you unhappy? So I don't know. I think the only time that you can be truly failing, I think, is if you give up on something that you don't want to, in my opinion.
Nice. I like that. And finally, what is Stephanie right now? She's going back to her very first house. You can picture that door, exactly how it looked like. You walk in, you can smell the same smells. You can hear your granddad. You can hear your mom. You go to your old room and you see that little girl sitting there playing with one of her favourite toys. What? She looks back at you and she knows everything that you've been through.
Go on.
And she looks back at you into your eyes, you look into her. What do you tell that little girl?
Be proud. And don't be afraid to listen to what you want and stand up for yourself. Stand up for what you believe in and be open-minded. Listen to and take something from everyone and try and be empathic to even the mean people, because there's a reason that they're mean. Be kind. I wasn't kind to myself for a long time. So I tell her to be kind to herself. Don't say mean things to yourself. But yeah.
That's important. I mean, like, got to realize the only person we really truly have is ourselves. Other people lead you on your journey.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're working against that person that's in the mirror, you know, then you're already halfway down already. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, but if you support yourself and say you can do this, get up, brush up, we can do it. It's another day.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can achieve anything you want to, and I think sometimes we fail to believe that.
Absolutely.
Is there any message that you'd like to what's your sort of main message that you wanted to give by coming on this podcast today?
What message do I want to give? I think we kind of just touched on it before, but you know, I think it's do what makes you happy, not what society tells you. You know, even if you start off doing something and you have a vision of how it should be, don't be afraid that might do a complete 180. That vision can be complete. That vision can change, and don't be afraid to go with it. And if something doesn't feel right, then don't do it.
Well, Stephanie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today.
Thank you.
If you just look directly into your camera. Just let everybody know how they're able to follow you.
Yes, so on Instagram, it's Stephanie Baker _property. On LinkedIn, Stephanie Baker. And yeah, drop me a DM if I can help anybody.
And there we go, guys. Another gem of a podcast for you. We've learned all about yachts today and scary experiences, down to, you know, traveling, and all about quarter horses. But we've also really learned the main thing, you know, what you come here for, and that's a little bit about entrepreneurship. We've learned a little bit about Newcastle, maybe you might not have heard before. So I hope you really enjoyed this episode. So if you did, please smash the like button, leave us a comment, and don't forget to share this with somebody else that could really help them as well. So I'll see you on the next one. Peace.